What is going on, hooligans? Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and welcome to, shockingly, the last episode of Fantasy House Live, at least for our fantasy football season, because we have reached the end. We reached the final week. A champion has been crowned, and yeah. So in this episode, we're gonna go over the results of the final week, see who our champion was, and how the rest of the matches played out. As always, we'll take a kind of deep dive into how those all played out. Then we will go into our final standings. And then lastly, we will have our very own 2022 banner raising here for the Hooligan House. Additionally, if you guys if you guys like the content, please feel free to hit the subscribe button, or additionally, you can hit that bell. Maybe you can get notified when more of these posts come out. Additionally, you can also leave some feedback down below, like I just pointed. You can also hit the share button if you want to share us out to your family and friends, which would be really awesome. But other than that, let's get into the sports action. You guys are amazing, so let's do it. Okay, to start off, we are going to go, but where else? Our game of the week, aka our championship match, which it was a close one, well, kind of, between Champ Cheese, the defending champ, and the Cheetah Hill, who, actually, this is technically a rematch of last year. This year, the Cheetah Hill got the W and was able to pull out the win, becoming our new Hooligan House Fantasy League World Champion, the Cheetah Hill. But yeah, they pretty much whooped my ass by a score of 136 to 108. It was, it was looking up right out the gates, was looking good, but then the fantasy gods just did not have it in my favor. So we will take a kind of a quick little peek into how the final match broke down. So starting at the top, and we'll go through this real quick. Rolled with Brock Purdy, so in our QBs, we had Brock Purdy go off for 19 points, while Dak went off for 17, so pretty even there. Then the Cheetah Hill, which the man that won him the championship, just like honestly Austin Eckler said he was going to do, he won him the championship. He went off for 32 points in a huge win over the Rams, while unfortunately, and it's ironic, I even kind of alluded to the weariness of wanting to draft two Vikings on draft day, and I think it's even more ironic that the team that really screwed me out of the playoffs and out of my fantasy football championship was none other than my very own Green Bay Packers. They shut down Justin Jefferson, they shut down Dalvin, and that pretty much costed me. But hey, what are you gonna do? Anyways, so as you can see here, Austin Eckler went off for 32, while Dalvin in that loss to Green Bay only had 6 points. If we move into the next set of running backs, Saquon also had a pretty mediocre day, only getting 7 points in that win over Indy. Travis Etienne continued to have a phenomenal day for Jacksonville, getting 23 points in the win over Houston. If you look in the wide receivers, even the wide receivers matchup was just lopsided. Tyreek Hill had saw himself being productive yet, even with Teddy Bridgewater at QB, getting 15 points. Then Justin Jefferson, like I was mentioning just before, just got shut down. I think he had one catch all day. Jair just shut him down for 2 points in the loss to Green Bay. In the next set of wide receivers, Devontae Smith was my only kind of saving grace here, getting 20 points. While in the loss to New Orleans, while Amon-Ra St. Brown, respectable 10 points in the blowout win over Chicago. Then in our tight ends, the Cheetah Hill had Evan Engram go off for 3 points. Well, I say go off, but only got 3 points despite the last coming into this matchup. Evan Engram had actually had several games where he's actually been doing quite well. I think he was in like the top 10 of tight ends scoring wise. Then when we look over at Champ Cheese with Dalton Schultz, who was the saving grace coming out of day one when the obviously Dallas and Tennessee played, was keeping it competitive. Unfortunately, the rest of the team did not keep up. David Montgomery threw up 5 points in that loss to Detroit, while Jalen Waddle threw up 8 points, even though it was Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. Jalen Waddle still put up respectable 8. I mean, it's obviously not 10 or 30, but still It's with a different QB, you'll take any points you can get. Then if we look at the defenses, there's a pretty evened out here. Jacksonville for the Cheetah Hill was able to get 16 points in the win over Houston, while the Giants were able to handle Indy pretty steadily, able to get 15 points on the week. And then finally, Eddie Pinheiro and thought he was going to put up some more points in that loss to Tampa, but unfortunately Tampa just kind of had their way with them, and they just didn't really give him too much of a chance. So he's only able to get 7, while Brett Maher in that Dallas win over Tennessee was able to get 10. And that is kind of how that one shook out. Had high hopes, but it just did not pan out. Now, if we switch into our consolation bracket, or well, in this case, it'll be our third place matchup, in which case it's Nugent picking up the win, picking up that taking home third place over CeeDeez Nuts, and a very lopsided affair. Granted, there are a bunch of players I will say there are a bunch of players, well, not a bunch, there are some players that are affected by the postponement of the Buffalo and Cincinnati game. So I think it's just the way it was looking for. It doesn't even matter if those players like had career days. I don't think there was any way that a lot of these players it would have changed the outcome. So even though technically the NFL hasn't, as of making this and recording this video, the NFL hasn't made a declaration on what they were going to do on it yet. With the Damar Hamlin situation. Speaking of which, there is actually information for Damar Hamlin's charity, which is the Chasing M's. It's actually a GoFundMe. That information will be below the video and in the comments if you do want to donate to that. Okay, we'll go into the breakdown real quick. We'll start with CeeDeez Nuts, who had Tua, who didn't play. So loss of points there was 0 points. Then Trevor Lawrence had a pretty minor day, 6. It was actually a pretty low day for the Jags there. Then if we move into the running backs, Christian McCaffrey for Team Nugent went off for 31 points, while James Conner for CD only was able to get 14 points in that loss to Atlanta. If we move into the next set of running backs, but we'll just stay with CD first. Ramondre Stevenson able to get 7 points in the win over Miami, while Tony Pollard doesn't look, I don't think he played. So that is a goose egg for Team Nugent there. Then if we move into the wide receivers, we'll stick with Nugent, who ironically enough has CD, who got 21 points in that big win over Tennessee. Then DeAndre Hopkins, I think he played but didn't get a catch. Oh no, he had one. Yeah, oh no, he did. He had one. He had a single reception for 4 yards. In that loss to Atlanta. Then Garrett Wilson had 4 in the loss to Seattle, while AJ Brown had himself a decent day despite the fact they lost to New Orleans for Team Nugent. In the tight ends, Mark Andrews, continuing for Nuge, got 19 points in the loss to Pittsburgh, while Tyler Conklin for CD was able to get 14 points in the loss to Seattle. Then here we have some suspended, not just because the game was suspended, between Joe Mixon and T. Higgins, as well as Evan McPherson. So we will look at just the players that are left. So for CD, it was the Browns defense, which got him 14 points in that win over Washington, while the Cowboys defense in that win over Tennessee was only able to get 9. And they were one of the most high-scoring defenses coming into this matchup. And then finally, Nick Folk for Team Nuge here was able to get 6 points in the win over Miami. Okay, and then in our 5th place game, it's Bob's Burgers rebounding from a loss last week, knocking them into the winner's consolation bracket, picking up the win against Destinoooo, who had been a top dog for a majority of the season, finishing in 6th place this year. And we'll take a look at how that match broke down. So if we look at the top, and as always, we start with our QBs. Jared Goff had 24 points in that win over Chicago, while Patrick Mahomes had 28 in that win over Denver. Then in the running backs, Najee Harris had 20 points in the win over Baltimore, while Nick Chubb for Destinoooo had 12 in the win over Washington. Then in our second matchup of running backs, Cordell Patterson had 20 points in the win over Arizona, while for Destinoooo, Josh Jacobs had 19 points in the loss to San Francisco. Then in our first set of wide receivers, Adam Thielen for Destinoooo only had 2.6 points in the shellacking to Green Bay. Just another testament to that weird, well, I guess to our defense, but anyways, then Keenan Allen continued has an awesome season. We're able to get 11 points in the win over the Rams. Moving into the next set, we have Christian Kirk here for Bob's Burgers, getting 4 points in that win over Houston, while Jerry Jeudy for Denver able to get 10 points in the loss to Kansas City. Then in the tight end spot, we have Travis Kelce going off for 11 points for Destinoooo in the win over Denver, while TJ Hawkinson able to go off for 12 points in the loss to Green Bay. Then in the battle of the flex spots, we have for Bob's Burgers, DJ Chark getting 7 points in the win over Chicago, while DJ Metcalf only able to get 1 point in the win over the Jets. In the defensive spot, we have for Destinoooo the Ravens, who are able to get 2 points in that loss to Pittsburgh, while the Niners got negative 3 points in the win over Vegas for Bob's Burgers. Then lastly, continuing with Bob's Burgers here, we have the kickers. Justin Tucker able to get 9 points in that loss to Pitt, while Harrison Butker for Destinoooo able to get only 2 points this week in a win over Denver. Okay, so the Lame Tanks were able to pick up the win over the Bajayjays in that 7th place game, 128-98. As always, we'll take a look at the QBs and whatnot and go through it. So we had the Lame Tanks with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, who obviously is part of that game. Then we have Kirk Cousins, who only had 9 points in that loss to Green Bay for the Bajayjays. Switching to the running backs, we had Alvin Kamara, who got 9 points in the win over Philly. Then DeAndre Swift was able to get 27 points in that big win over Chicago. Moving into the second set of running backs, we have J.K. Dobbins, who was able to get 9 points in the loss to the Pit, while Brian Robinson was able to get 8 points in the loss to Cleveland. Then in the first set of wide receivers, we have Amari Cooper for the Lame Tanks going off for 25 points in that win over the Washington, while Michael Pittman Jr. for the Bajayjays only getting 16 points in the loss to the Giants. I say only getting 16 points. It's still very good. Then in the second set of wide receivers, we have Mike Williams going off for 16 points in the win over the Rams for the Bajayjays, while DJ Moore for Lame Tanks was able to get 23 points in the loss to Tampa. Then in our tight end matchup, we have George Kittle getting 12 points in the win over Vegas, while Gerald Everett able to get 10 points in the win over the Rams. Then in our flex spot, we have Devin Singletary, obviously, who was a part of that Buffalo and Cincinnati game, which is suspended. So we'll switch to Kenneth Walker, who got 15 points in the win over the Jets. Then in Detroit, in the battle of the defenses, we have the Broncos, who were able to get 5 points in that loss to KC, while the Packers were able to get 23 points in the huge win over Minnesota. Then finally, in our kicker matchup for these two, we have Matt Gay for the Lame Tanks, able to get 4 points, while Cameron Dicker able to get 8 points for the Bajayjays in the win over the Rams. And then finally, in our last matchup, the Dumpster Fire Bowl between Team Breeki and the Chicago Deviants, in which case Team Breeki was able to pull off the win against the Deviants to finish in that 9th spot. We'll take a look at how that broke down. So we had Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson as QBs for both these guys, who did not set their lineups again. So QBs just didn't count. In the battle of the running backs, we had Cam Akers, who's come alive towards the end of the season here, getting 14 points in that loss to the Chargers. Then for the Deviants, Leonard Fournette only able to get 8 points in the win over Carolina. If we move into the next set of running backs, we have Miles Sanders able to get 6 points in the loss to New Orleans, while Aaron Jones for Team Breeki able to get 13 points in the win over Minnesota. Stephon Diggs, again, part of that one of those two teams that were having to postpone the game, so no points there. Well, he had 4 points before it got postponed. Robert Woods has 14 points in the loss to Dallas. Then in our next set of wide receivers, we have George Pickens, only able to get 4.9 points in the win over Baltimore, while Davante Adams had a huge day in the loss to San Francisco. Then in our tight end matchup, we had Pat Freiermuth go off for 6 points in the win over Baltimore, while Hunter Henry able to get 10 points in the win over Miami. Then in our flex spot, we have Michael Gallup for the Chicago Deviants, able to get 6 points. Well, yet again, Allen Robinson remains in that flex spot for Team Breeki, who did not play, so that is another goose egg. Then in their defensive matchup, we have the Bills, who have 8 points in the Bills defense, which had 8 points before getting that game was suspended. Then the Rams got -4 points in the blowout loss to the Chargers. And then finally, we have Daniel Carlson able to get 12 points in the loss to San Fran, with Tyler Bass able to get 3 points before that game was postponed. And that actually will do it for how the rest of our just how the playoff shape shook out. So now, the next part that we're going to do here is our final standings. In which case, this is what they're looking out. So again, the Cheetah Hill taking home that number 1 spot with an overall finishing with a record of 9-5. Then in number 2 was Champ Cheese, finishing with a record of 7-7. In third place was Nugent. What the fuck? Was Team Nuge, able to get with a record of 10-4. Then in the 4th spot was CeeDeez Nuts with a record of 6-8. In 5th place is Bob's Burgers, taking home a record of 8-6. In the 6th spot is Destinoooo with a record of 9-5. In the 7th spot, we have the Lame Tanks with a record of 5-9. In the 8th spot, we have the Bajayjays with a record of 5-9. Then in 9th place, we have Team Breeki with a record of 5-9. And then lastly, for unfortunately the worst in the league, the complete dumpster fire of the season is the Chicago Deviants, with finishing with a record of 6-8. Brings me to the last bit, and it is our official banner raising for the season. And the Hall of Champions has one new banner, and that banner belongs to none other than our 2022 Hooligan House Fantasy Football League champion, than The-Cheetah Hill. Beautiful. Looking real good next to my banner. So that is the second banner, obviously, that we've raised here. Soon we will be raising a third one for when our fantasy basketball league kind of starts up. But for right now, this is the only 2 that we got. So congrats again to The-Cheetah Hill, and thanks again to all of our contestants. I say contestants, but everyone that has been in the league. It was a crazy up and down league for myself personally. I almost didn't even think I was going to make the playoffs. Things were going left and right. But we limped all the way to the playoffs, got to the championship, and then my team just went kaput. It's just, how it goes sometimes. But yeah, that is, I think, where we are going to call this one. I want to once again thank you guys for coming along this very crazy journey, for my first time making this entire season all on YouTube. So I had a whole year of going through the reviews, doing previews, power rankings. Then we got to the playoffs where everything got interesting, and then we went over a slightly modified version of our show with each round, this time covering, the winner's bracket, winner's consolation brackets, loser's brackets, and then once we declared a new winner, we got our final standings, and lastly, we covered the new and updated Hall of Champions. I want to thank you guys for hanging out this entire time. It's been a wild ride, an incredible season. We're definitely going to be, making more videos like this in the future. That is for sure. be doing it. I'm gonna try to do it with more of all of the leagues that we do here in the Hooligan House. But thank you for joining me on this journey and hanging out. I always appreciate all of your feedback and whatnot down below. Additionally, it would mean the world to me if you would give me a sub here on YouTube as we're trying to build it up. And one more thing, and just kind of reiterating that if you would like to donate to the GoFundMe page for Damar Hamlin, there will be a link in the description of this video down below if you would actually like to donate to that. Prayers out to Damar and his family, and I'll see you guys in the next video.